you have to be clear what you want. If you want to jump in the ocean, you jump. Otherwise, just stay on the shore and put your feet a bit in the water. So with Kundalini, you can't just say, oh, a little bit. It's not possible. It's or you have the whole thing or you have nothing.
Welcome to the Seeing in the Dark podcast, the podcast for new ways of leading and doing business. No more separation between money, power, and leadership, and being a deeply spiritual human being. Seeing in the Dark is about walking paths that have not been walked before and truly making a change in a world in which old ways are crumbling. My name is Nicole Nima Costeres, CEO of a multiple six-figure soul-based business, and here to take you into the mysteries of purpose, power, intuition, and soul-based leadership. May you embody your own unique essence so deeply that your vibration naturally teaches, inspires, and assists others. Let's dive in. Welcome everyone to this week's episode with a very beautiful guest, Pema Gitama. Pema has been my Tantra teacher since 2019 and also the first person that could actually help me on my journey with Kundalini Awakening. Pema is an international Tantra teacher and she's the founder of WildTantra, a beautiful school, you could say, that has a beautiful variety of retreats where you can study in-depth Tantra, but also work with Kundalini energy. But even beyond that, I would say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Pema, I would say it's a school that supports the awakening into who we truly are. I want to welcome you, Pema, into today's episode. I'm super happy that you are here and I can't wait to start asking you all these questions. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And as for the presentation, sounds good.
Yeah, right. Because I think with Tantra, the first thing that we can go towards is that it's all about sexuality and that it's all about, I don't know, pleasure, things like that. But actually, one of the first things that I experienced in studying with you in 2019 was that it was very much about awakening into who we truly are. And even though the body is then a vehicle of that, but the way you teach, this is how I experienced you, is very much around exploring and discovering who I am.
Yeah, that's totally right. And even though there is maybe the flavor of sex dimension a little bit into it, to me it's very clear that it has just absolutely nothing to do with sexuality in some way, but more like waking up, just waking up sometimes I like to say the real Buddha nature inside.
Yeah. So like I asked you just before we started the conversation, like, what would you like me to call you, a Tantra teacher? And I feel curious, what has been your journey with Tantra? How did Tantra enter into your life?
Basically, I think the first step was when I met Osho and I started to dive a bit more into his teaching, and especially the teaching around Tantra that just completely blew my whole setup, my whole structure. So I started from there. I started with a lot of meditation, and also it's a long journey, so I don't want to make it too long, but also diverse Tantra master also that came through and gave me quite a big package. I like to see it as a package of different methods and especially different processes that I went into with the partner I was at that time. So it's like in 2000, even a little bit before actually. So for quite some years, I did practice before I dare to put it out to other people, which is quite a challenge, by the way. Yeah, the main move was with Osho at the start, and then the other that came into it,
So if you could describe Tantra, how would you, what is the meaning of Tantra?
Maybe first thing I could say is the most scary path you can enter in. It's not very appealing, maybe, to say it like that, but I usually like to say is a way where we can encounter reality directly. And for that, we have to completely destroy in some way everything that is in between. And the one that is in between the most is the ego, which carries all false interpretation of reality. Like when we go with our liking, disliking, all those kind of projection also from conditioning, all those kind of things, they stand in between in that little entity of the ego, and it's like a kind of a ghost in between, or a filter. And Tantra likes to completely demolish this filter. So in that, there is thousands of different practices we can go through, but basically they all point out to the same thing. If you look at it, the essence is how we move this filter out. And this filter, why we want to move it out, is because we suffer with it. So basically, you could say that Tantra is a path of liberation, like we liberate ourselves from all the suffering, all the misery we are in.
Yeah. So when we look at other modalities in spirituality, there is many ways in which we can grow towards liberation. Why do you feel Tantra includes this like realm of sexuality and the body and sexual energy?
Because we are in a body, we can't escape from it. So we don't have really choices in some way. And the beauty of really moving with the body, we use the body constantly in our everyday life. So also, if you look all the basic method in Tantra, they're going to use all the action in daily life. And this action, they are carried with the body. So we bring back constant awareness there. And regarding using the dimension of sexuality is one principle very interesting there, is where we have access to the raw energy, where it's pure, it's not conditioned. If you go deep into sex, you cannot bring your conditioning. Otherwise, is what we call sexuality. I make a big difference between sex and sexuality. For me, it's quite huge difference. When we still in sexuality, we still have our conditioning around sex. So we are not tapping exactly in the center of the life force. In sex is completely naked. There is no conditioning, there is no fear, there is no all this, there is no ego also, by the way. So we are exactly at the center of the life force. So it's the most direct way, sex, you could say, is the most direct way to encounter existence or reality. So this is why Tantra wants to put us there. It's wild. It's wild, and it's a bit, it's also dangerous somewhere, because we can misuse it again. We misuse everything in this life. We are a strange little people, and we misuse it for the power that it can give us. And then, like I say, ego comes back into place. It's very tricky. And in going really at the center of sex, so at the center of the life force, we start tapping into different powers that, let's say, if we don't have pure intention, it can go very wrong somehow. This is also why for a long, long time in tradition, all the practice that were around sex, they were completely secret. They were not given away like that easily. First, you had to undergo a lot of different practices, different purification practices also.
Yeah. And this is in many ancient traditions the case, right? Because I just came from West Africa in January and I received my initiation into voodoo, in African voodoo. And this was originally also a very closed community where the invocations and the prayers and the ceremonies were kept secret very much. And this is also opening. Do you have a sense of why ancient traditions have been opening up so much, where it's no longer such a secret behind closed doors anymore?
We are in a time of all the secret that gets open. This time of communication. I don't want to go in the whole thing, the Aquarius time, but it's true. It's really true. We are in a time where we have to put out all the secret, because in this secret we can reshape a bit everything that went a bit wrong now in our society. And we are all looking for the source, like looking who we are exactly. So we go back in our history, we go back in our memories, and so then we go back in our traditions. And in our tradition, we have to open the secrets. Now, sure, there is a little danger into it. Is how we're going to manipulate this according to our desires, our own little wishes inside that are not always very, very beautiful. But at the same time, it's needed. It's needed to open these secrets. And let's see if we manage to navigate this without manipulating them.
Do you feel this is one of the reasons why, because there's many different Tantra modalities, and I get so many questions like, where can I study Tantra? Do you know a good place? And I always send them to you because this is the place where I've been, and I've always experienced your space as a space that felt very safe to me, very like with pure intention. But I also know that there's many Tantra spaces that don't necessarily are able to hold that pure intention, or where there is manipulation in the space. Do you feel that's because of this piece that you just named, that when you access sex, you access certain powers, and when you don't wield these powers with pure intention, there's manipulation sometimes in the space?
Definitely. Yeah. And it is fine that there is all these different modalities. At some point, I was a little bit angry with it. But now I see one thing that is interesting is that it sharpened the sense of discernment of people. When you have a lot of choices, before maybe you had few Tantra school, it was easy. But when you have 100 and 1,000 of them, you need a clear sense of perception to navigate and to really feel. And this, I feel, is also very important. And then it doesn't matter, if some schools are a bit distorted or not. In some way, it has some advantage in sharpening your sense of discernment. So we can be grateful for all of it in some way.
Yes. So I feel curious because the intention of why I invited you onto the podcast was just bringing my curiosity to you around Kundalini energy and Kundalini Awakening. And we've been doing a few episodes around Kundalini Awakening. I've been also sharing my own journey, which was not an easy one. I've been struggling and having very intense journey with my Kundalini Awakening. And one of the things in the first 3 years, I couldn't find the right support. And one of the intentions for me creating these episodes is to offer also some information and education, but also in some way, some support to people that are in a place that I was in, where maybe you don't find the right support, or maybe you don't fully understand what's happening to your body, or maybe you're struggling with something that has a connection to Kundalini Awakening. So I would love to hear from you what you would describe Kundalini energy as. What is Kundalini energy?
In very simple terms, maybe there are things also to reshape in the picture, because we speak about Kundalini. It's a little bit tricky. We have Kundalini and Kunda. Is a little bit two different terms that belong to each other. So you have one that is the container and the passage, and you have what is going through the passage. Like you have your veins and you have the blood going through. So we have these two things coming together, and they are very important to look at. You can have access to the container and yet not be able to move what is in the container. So the container basically carries the life force. And that life force wakes up with intention. And then we have this famous picture of the snake, poop, 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 going through this very beautiful picture. And then we have what we call Kundalini Awakening, and this goes through this different passage that we have inside. So meaning we have life force suddenly waking up in our system. What does it mean when we say waking up the life force through our system? We mean waking up also a full potential of a human being. So full potential also of consciousness, of full potential of love. And Are we ready for that? That's another question. We can look at it later, but okay, just to say. And for that, the body needs to be ready for that, because waking up the full potential of the life force, it means reshaping the physical body in many ways. The mind has to be ready for that. Also, it reshapes the mind. Emotions have to be ready for that, because it also reshape everything there. So when we say awakening the Kundalini energy, it means awakening the full potential of the life force in our system, meaning blossoming in all our potential. That really asks a lot. First of all, having a lot of courage and a lot of understanding, basically, of where we put our feet into it.
Yeah. So how would someone know if they're ready for Kundalini Awakening? Because like I said, I receive these questions sometimes for women and they tell me, oh, they're going to do a Kundalini training somewhere. Like, how would someone know if they're ready? Because, okay, some people, they maybe don't have the choice because it spontaneously happens, right? But then there's the people that consciously are going after it or going towards it or want, go with the intention of awakening it. So how would they know if they're ready?
Yeah, first I can say originally the tradition is through the master. It's never your own intention to say, Yahoo, I'm going to open up my Kundalini. It was never the question. So it will always come from the master giving you specific initiation that would unlock. And by also giving you special, you could say training is a funny way to say, like special practices. Nowadays, we function different. So you can go to a workshop and say, Opla, I'm going to practice different things to open up my Kundalini. It will work and it will not work. So it will work up to the extent that you can manage it. And it will not work in a sense, the fullest blossom, because simply you have limitation. And as long as you don't have passed through this limitation, they might be physical, they might be psychological or emotional, it will not go through unless, like you say, you have this spontaneous awakening, which most of the time we call them accidents in tantric terms, That's a tough one, but usually if the accident happens is that you are ready for it. So let's say maybe you have been calling for it at some point. But let's not speak about that accident now, but more like how you mention it. It will give you glimpses to what you can take, and maybe you will have to work on it and fully being dedicated to it if you want it to work. And it's a big work. It's not a little work you can just say, okay, I take it lightly. Far, far from that. And maybe even a lifelong work, if it's to say. That asks, for me, a lot of purification in order to really function. A lot of burning down, actually. And it's burning down of many, many limitations. So maybe you can go to a workshop, which I really advise to everybody, because it's very important. But you will have glimpses that will show you actually most of the time your limitation. A little pleasure, and then where are the limitations? The passage is actually narrow because you have limitation. It's very confronting. So to be honest, Kundalini work is extremely confronting. It's not just super nice.
How has this journey been for you? Like, do you remember like the time in your life where your Kundalini started to awaken? How did that happen?
It's not a pretty one. It was also an accident. It's a little bit dangerous to share about, because I wonder how the people, they can receive that. I was in a quite extreme tantric process with a partner, with a very tough master, by the way, which really push all the limitation. And especially limitation in relating, and also body limitation. And there I prefer not to say, because it's going to scare everybody. There has been 3 major, let's say, awakening that you could say can be accident, but maybe to be more nice, I would say they were more through a very direct practice. And one, you're going to laugh because it's a funny one, was through receiving really a strong slap in my face. And it was out of a moment where my energy system was at its peak. It was a very, very, very intense moment in a practice. And the shock, the physical shock, it created the explosion. It was amazing, to be fully honest. I think, in paradise for a few days with a rush in the body, completely incredible. And it didn't last, to be also honest. It didn't last simply because limitation closed down again the system, not fully. And so I had to work with this limitation, go looking, okay, what it is, and waking up again the Kundalini to burn it again. And one of the major ones came through lovemaking, which was really in a setup of a tantric practice. So there was a long step before coming to the lovemaking. And this was truly incredible. And there I like to explain, because I think also for people it's important, because in this practice, there is one crucial point, which is surrender. And for most of us, the little trouble with Kundalini is that we don't surrender to it. This is why the limitation, they come back, and it's very painful. So in that specific practice, lovemaking, there was this moment of complete surrender. So when I say complete surrender, I mean no way to come back. Most of the time when we say surrender, actually it's just letting go. You let go for a moment, is amazing, and you come back. Yeah, let's say come back to normal. In surrender, there is no way to come back to normal. It's like you are completely taken away. Like everything is gone. You can't come back. Even you try hard, it's not possible. So meaning the life force really takes completely over. It takes over the body, takes over the mind, the emotion, everything is taken over. And you get reshaped in no time. So in this one, I feel it's important really for people to understand that in full Kundalini awakening, there is no way to come back. And that's maybe extremely scary, because first of all, where you go, what gets burned down, and when finally you land back again, I'm not saying come back, you just land back a little bit, you cannot function the same way as before. And it's nice to know this, to have the little warning that you will not be the same afterwards. And okay, after this major, beautiful awakening, it has been a long work, a long path, This awakening, it was in maybe 2001 or 2002, something like that. So you see, it's a long time ago. Huh? And that doesn't mean I got enlightened and the life went super nice. No, far from that. The life started from another level where I face all my shit, basically. So you face all the residues of the ego that needs to be burned. You face everything that you still attached to. But now you face it with a tremendous energy power that can burn it or that can transform it. So you have more power to go through these limitations. It's a very beautiful but very confronting and intensive. You can't escape anymore to see. Before you could, at least for me, I could still sit back and be blind. Suddenly you cannot be completely blind. You face everything constantly and more accurate and much more strong than before. And to stabilize this is not easy, to be fully honest. It requires, I feel, major changes. Especially, I feel the first one is changes on the body level. So diets, breathing, surroundings, all kind of things like that need to be reshaped and fast. You have to do it very fast in order to have a body that can handle the full fire inside. You can't make too many mistakes there because you pay quite a strong price afterwards.
Yeah. What were some of the biggest changes you had to make in order to help the energy stabilize in your body?
One very strong one is to stop trying to own that energy, to own the Kundalini, to say it's not mine, trying to manipulate it or to direct it the way I want for what I want. You know, this I. But this one is a big one. And I have to be honest, I'm still confronted with it. It still comes back here, there, that, my preference is that, this thing that wants to own is like you want to own life, basically. You want to own Kundalini, you cannot. Another aspect in this work, you have to bring devotion constantly. You have to be a devotee of the Kundalini, the master somewhere. And because it's happening inside our body, it's more easy to say, oh, no, I master it. It's my body, is my Kundalini, my. No, it is not.
Beautiful. And what would you say has been one of the biggest gifts that you received from your whole Kundalini Awakening journey?
Seeing, like opening the eyes and on myself, basically. And sure, it helps also outside because you more perception in everything, in people's intention, in people's even mind or whatever their energy, their approach, but mostly on myself. So like having more perception on all my inner games, you become very sharp suddenly. It's like you have a sword in your hand and there's many ways to use it. But for me, the most is the perception. Really incredible.
Hi there. Just a short break from the episode to let you know that 23rd of July in Amsterdam, in a beautiful big cathedral, we come together with an amazing group of women for a one-day temple journey. A temple journey into the dark feminine. The dark feminine is an archetype that lives within all of us, and it's an archetype that has been rejected by society. It's the wild woman, the witch, the untamed part of ourselves, the part of ourselves that helps us in our full expression, in our wildness, in our roar, in our freedom, in our sensuality. The dark feminine is not a woman, but she's an archetypal energy that holds the primordial wisdom, the deep feminine wisdom of the body, the deep feminine wisdom of the womb, the deep feminine wisdom of stillness, of darkness. And darkness not in the sense of evil, but darkness in the sense of the lower centers of our body, the lower physical centers of our body, but also the earth, the darkness of the earth, of the ground. The dark feminine is an archetype that will help you with unhiding yourself. She is the archetype to visit if you want to unhide more of who you are. Show up in the world from your truth, your authenticity, and the truth that you can speak. The dark feminine is an archetype, if I can describe her in 2 words, freedom and liberation. And in this one-day temple journey, me, together with my dear friend and sister in the work, Winter Jade Isley, guide you into getting to know this archetype within yourself, getting to love and welcome this archetype within yourself, because we don't necessarily live in a world where our dark feminine is fully welcome. So this day is an initiation into this archetype, initiation into freedom, liberation, free expression, and discovering yourself as the wild, untamed life itself. So, link is below this episode. We warmly welcome you into this day that includes a beautiful lunch and a full day temple journey, a day with the dark feminine in Amsterdam. Now, back to the episode. I also experience you as someone super clear on that, because I've been asking you for support also on multiple occasions over the last few years, and your ability to sense energy is very, very clear. And it's something that I really love about who you are and how you work. I even remember a few dreams where you would come, because then I couldn't reach you because I think you were traveling in the mountains. And I suddenly remember that you told me, if I'm not there, you can also just ask me intuitively and I will come and answer you. And you actually came in my dreams to teach me about something I was struggling with in my Kundalini Awakening process. Yeah. So we've been sharing a bit about how someone can take care of themselves in this process. One thing that I think I received the most benefit from that you shared with me is to create a harmonious environment in your body. Can you speak a bit about that? Because I think that was one thing that really changed my experience with my Kundalini Awakening, where I was struggling a lot before. Creating a harmonious environment in my body really helped also for the stabilizing of the energy.
Yeah, we always say the body is the temple. It's a nice thing, but I think nobody believes it. So first of all, for everyone is to say, okay, really, it's true. It's the temple. So what does it mean? It means it's a sacred place. And in a sacred place, we can relax, no? When you go in the outer temple, for example, it's the place you can sit down and relax. You feel at home there. So we looked at the body. We need to have the same approach, that to be safe inside the body, knowing that it's going to die, knowing that it's very vulnerable things. It can get hurt very easily. But so to see that the body is the place where we can relax, where we are at home, and where we are safe in its own limits somewhere. From there, it creates a very, I think, beautiful setting where when we have all this work on Kundalini, we can also approach it calmly. So sometimes we also say, okay, it's about loving yourself. Maybe it goes a bit in the same direction. I prefer not to go in this direction because it would be too long speech. I prefer to say, okay, view the body as a temple in a sense of relaxation, of being calm in it, or being at home, and meaning also of taking care of it as a temple. So you don't start to put garbage into it. So now I could define what are the garbage, but that's going to be a little bit tricky. Let's say, okay, look, the food. I don't want to give a lesson on food there, but for people to look at their food. And if you have more sensitivity, it's going to be clear that some food, they are definitely garbage. So you start being a little bit more clear there. The input from all the senses, basically. What you listen, what you see, what you smell, what you touch, what you eat, everything that comes to the senses, it means everything that comes to the temple. And there, again, you don't want to bring garbage inside. And this is very important in the beginning. And I must say the beginning might be long, but this is very important. Later on, I would say at a certain level, it doesn't matter because you have the Kundalini that can transform everything. This is another stage of Kundalini. You want to use also energy to transform things. But at the start, you want to have the temple clean from your own garbage first, and then clean from garbage you receive outside. So very important to create this setting for the body. Really extremely important, and not to be taken lightly. For me, it is crucial, actually, to be honest. Also, movement, how you move the body, okay, that you do yoga or other practices, and one on top maybe of everything, but the breathing. What is the wind that comes inside the temple? How you let the wind come in. It should be a wind clean. Also, what are the intention you bring in the temple? What are the emotion you bring in the temple? What are the thoughts you bring in the temple? All those things.
So you have been probably seen hundreds, if not thousands of people in their Kundalini Awakening. Like, what are some things that you notice in people that are in that process that you would like to speak to? Maybe something that you see, oh, there's so many people doing this, and I would say that to them, or so many people struggling with this, and I would recommend that.
But one of the major things that I see is that people, they want, but actually they don't want. Because once it starts happening a little bit, there is a little bit of glimpse. The things that I hear all the time, oh, it's too much. Yeah, sure, it's too much. So there is this kind of division, like you want, you don't want, you want to, and this creates a little mess. So it's like you have to be clear what you want. If you want to jump in the ocean, you jump. Otherwise, just stay on the shore and put your feet a bit in the water. So with Kundalini, you can't just say, oh, a little bit. It's not possible. It's or you have the whole thing or you have nothing. Or you have glimpses. You always have glimpses anyway in the beginning. It's like a bit, sometimes I feel Kundalini is just testing you a little bit. Let's see if it's really true that you want me or not. So it gives you glimpses and then it's clear if actually you're ready or not. But you can't fool around. Like I said, the most of the thing I hear and I see is this kind of how people, they limit a bit the whole thing because they get afraid. So what I see the most is fear. So there is the longing, but there is fear. And sorry to say, but with fear, it doesn't work. So it's maybe one of the things people, they have to make clear also in themselves.
Yeah. And what would you think they could ask themselves? Because I think one of the things I've been needing a lot to face all the things that were being triggered in me by the Kundalini energy was a courage. A courage to, to face my biggest fears, even if I'm trembling all over with fear, to still have the courage to stay present in the process. That was one of them. Yeah. And another one I would say has been a big one for me as well is to trust life. To trust that whatever is happening in that process, that it's in support of me, even if it brings me to edges that I find very uncomfortable or scary, or I don't know exactly where I'm going, or something in my life burns down, my business burns down, or my relationship burns down, or, the place where I live disappears because suddenly life guides me into a completely different direction. For me, it has been a big process of surrendering to how life guides me in each moment and to trust that it's in service for me. Yeah, that it works for me, not against me. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I think courage is definitely the step. And I think till the end of everything. And it's courage. And for me also is a courage to bow down to the life force, to bow down everything. And ultimately to bow down the self, to really offer it. And this scared the hell out of all of us. We want to stay as an identity, as a me. And this cannot stand in front of the life force. So we do it gradually, but at least having the intention. So first the courage and the intention to say, yes, okay, I bow down the self, I bow down the ego, I bow down the I bow down all my limitation, my conditioning, all my fears and everything. And like I say in the beginning, and maybe for a long time, it's just intention, but I feel having the courage to carry the intention bright and to remind ourselves so that we don't fool ourselves there is crucial. You have to know that at the end, it's going to be, it destroy everything of you. In a sense, is a rebirth. So to not be afraid to die, if it's in a way, knowing there is a rebirth process through it. But okay, the dying process, you need to confront it with courage and with playfulness. Let's put it also this one, because otherwise it sounds all like, oh my God, like it sounds a bit terrifying, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Not going to encourage. So it has also a lot of humor into it. It's also very joyful, the whole process. It's devastating in some way, but the devastating is super joyful. It brings about so much joy on the way. So fine, it's dying joyfully, dying with a big laughter somehow. But keep the courage. For me, the courage of carrying the intention, bow down everything to the life force. In all traditional terms, I bow down everything to at the feet of the master, at the feet of the guru. Okay, now the guru is the Kundalini or the life force. But this one is important to have it inside. Carry this very beautifully and bright. Beautiful. So that when there is moment where it gets super scary, or like you said, it puts you upside down, that you don't know what makes sense. And that this one, if it's bright, it gives you always a clear direction in the work process.
I think one example of that was when I in the last few years, my work grew towards the direction of working with women in their business.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to Benin this January, and I felt a big shift where suddenly that whole part of my work didn't feel right anymore. And I felt that suddenly my focus went to ritual and temple work. And I could feel how I needed to bow down and say, okay, I will pause this for now. And I let go of a mastermind, which provided my main income for the last 2 years. And it was really scary because suddenly my income was shrinking, and I could feel that fear, and I could feel the parts of me that wanted to hold on to that safety. But actually, then what I needed was to keep the clear intention of, no, I want to stay true to where life is guiding me, even if that means everything will crumble down. Because then, I can at least say I stay true to this. I can stay true to where the life force is guiding me. And since then, I've been in the last 6 months or so in a really big transformation process in myself, but also in my work. And now I am still mentoring some women in their business because I love that. But it's not so much at the center anymore of my work, because at the center is the work with the rituals and the temple and, the work with my mediumship and the things like that. And I think it's one example of so many that I feel the Kundalini Awakening process can invite us into. It's like are you okay with letting everything go? That's the invitation that just keeps coming back and coming back. But inside of that, I can also see that who I'm becoming or who I am is so much more fulfilling and so much more real and so much more at home than who I was before.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Kundalini is pointing to your authenticity. So it's going to point out to everything that is a bit fake or false. And if you are really courageous and honest to let it go, sure, it reshape your life. So like you say, your work, but for somebody, something else, but it's going to reshape everywhere where actually it's not very authentic with your own qualities also, with your own potential. Yeah. So it's beautiful. Yes, letting go. It's a good one.
So now that some of the listeners are maybe very curious to go towards exploring Kundalini Awakening, and some may feel a little bit like, oh, this all sounds a bit scary. What would you say to them could be a first step or question they can ask?
I would say that you need to be scared at first. I think it's a good warning. It's like in a good sense. It's a bit like when you are on top of a cliff, there is a river down, and it's a bit scary to jump. You can feel this heartbeat because it's true. There is a danger. You don't know where you're going to fall. So I feel, good, approach it carefully. So there's a little trembling, a little, where I'm putting my feet. And at least this keeps you a little bit alert and aware. So you don't approach the whole stuff too lightly. That you say, nice, you plug, gonna have Kundalini. This whole crap, we don't want this. So a sense of respect also that goes with it. You're gonna really step in this force that is building this whole creation we are in. It's like for me, you can say approaching the mother respectfully. Many times it's called the mother. Kundalini is not for nothing. So you approach the mother respectfully. You don't approach the mother with all your little wanting, your neediness, and your complaint, especially your complaint. Oh my God. You strip down all these things. So you approach with respect and with a sense that, it's a big fire. It can burn. So I have to approach this a bit carefully also. And maybe also for people to question why they would like the Kundalini to be open for what. So what's the intention? That I think before jumping into that, question the intention. So clear up the intention. Because for many, the intention, I'm sorry to say, but it's not very nice. For many, first of all, is sexual. And sure, you will have better sex, but I don't see the point. So if it's just to fulfill some little needy things inside or ego stuff inside, I don't see really the point. So question your intention. And of course, after that, find the right people to do this work. And when I mean by that, you don't have to find a super enlightened master for it, but the people you feel there is a good friendship, that you can be at home, a good family, I can say. Meaning also some people or one person that you can have a good capacity to communicate. It needs to be a good spiritual friend, if it's to say. So not, you don't have a master on top that you cannot relate with and that cannot support you in your journey. So for me, it's very important because it can be very chaotic sometimes, this Kundalini awakening, and you need to have good support. For me, the good support is a friendly support.
Yeah. So you also offer really beautiful retreats with WildTantra. And do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I can imagine that some of the listeners are actually curious about you and your work and where they can find out more. We will for sure link the link also to your website and everything. But yeah, can you share a bit about your work and the events that you're offering?
You know, we in WildTantra, we call it the path of awakening. And in this path, we have set up of different retreats, like something like 7. And it's like, for me, I set it up like a journey. And there's a journey from, like I said, the bright side of pleasure. We work a lot with pleasure. Actually, Kundalini for me is also, you have to work with pleasure at first, before touching other painful things. So the whole journey of this path of awakening is to anchor ourselves in the dimension of pleasure via the body, via the senses. And once we are there, starting to shift in awakening this Buddha nature inside. I put it in between things like that because it can be said differently. But our full capacity of awakening, so the Buddha nature, let's call it this way. And first we awaken the body, we awaken the senses, and then where it starts to get less maybe pleasurable is to start looking what is in between the direct encounter with existence that I was referring in the beginning of the talk. But in order to have this direct encounter, we first need the full body awaken and senses awaken. And then, of course, on the way of doing this, we look very much at the heart. Can we finally open to the heart? I'm not saying opening the heart, because for me, the heart is always open. There's no doors there, you know. But can we open to it? Can we enter it? So we first enter the body, we enter via the senses, and with the senses, we enter the heart. In entering the heart, we enter the inner shrine. And in that inner shrine, we have the full potential of being a human, basically. And we can call this enlightenment, and it's a very dangerous word that I don't dare to use too much, but in tradition is how we call it. So it's awakening this little sleepy one that is inside the inner shrine. So on this, we burn down everything that we think is me, and we burn it down with a lot of pleasure, with a lot of joy, even if it's painful to let go of this little me. So the retreats in the beginning, they feel like giving up a lot of intensity, a lot of finally brightness, because we get very alive. Instead of functioning at the minimum, we start functioning quite on a high level of energy. And then this high level of energy, we start using it to redirecting it, looking much more inwards and much more like I call like the inner shrine, the more in tantric term, we call it the cave of Shiva. So first we are in the garden of Shiva. It's very bright. It's the first year of the retreat. And in the second year, we enter the cave of Shiva, and it's the dark side. Dark in a luminous sense. But in entering the cave of Shiva, then we have to bow down everything. And like I was saying, you bow down everything at the feet of the mother. You also bow down everything at the feet of Shiva. And you start the whole transforming process where you use Kundalini forces to completely reshape yourself utterly, completely. And that's about the journey.
Yeah, and people can join you in that journey in the Netherlands.
Yeah. the main place is the Netherlands.
Yeah, and for the listeners, Nemanja, my partner, and I, we have went through the first year with Pema in 2019. And I really loved it. I feel it completely changed me. It completely changed our relationship. I felt that we were held in a very beautiful, safe, loving space throughout the whole year. And I can warmly recommend for anyone who wants to go on this journey with Tantra and Kundalini Awakening and awakening to who you truly are, then yeah, I warmly recommend to study with Pema in the WildTantra trainings. Yeah. I want to thank you so much for being here with us today and share your beautiful wisdom. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for welcoming and questioning. I always like questions.
Yeah, and for everyone else, I'm looking forward to see you again next week on a new episode. I send you much love and wish you a beautiful week. Did you receive any inspiration, motivation, or powerful breakthroughs by listening to this episode? Then please share this episode by taking a screenshot and tagging me in your stories at nicole.nima.costeres. I would love to celebrate you, share you in my stories, and it would mean so much to have my work reach more powerful, passionate women like you. Thank you so much and looking forward to see you next week.